Yeah, good evening, and welcome to another live Q&A session hosted by me, Matt Covert, founder of RacersHQ.com. I have a lot of really great things that I want to talk about in this session, and this has been a really interesting morning because there's Paul Sexton. God bless you, my man. This has been a really interesting morning because I have had to... I got up and I had a lot of great questions come in overnight. And I actually stopped and rearranged a bunch of stuff so that I could get a whole bunch of really fresh, relevant stuff on the session tonight, which I'm really excited about, and I'm really looking forward to getting into some of these things. So, for those of you who are hopping on right now at the very beginning, of course we do live Q&A sessions right here. Paul Sexton with a little sunglasses emoji. That's awesome. I love that. I want to make sure that you know that I have created a really helpful frequently asked questions resource for those of you who are looking for more information or just looking for some basics or whatever the case may be. There's Calvin Gillick. He says, "Hey Matt, checking in during a run. Kind of hot out there." Oh man, Calvin, I hear you. I am sweating. I'm sweating really bad here in my little office, but that's how we do it. No problem. So, dude, way to get out there and grab some. I don't know if you mean run by like you're out there and doing fitness stuff, or you're out there like autocrossing. But either way, pleased to have you along. If you are interested in more frequently asked questions, the ones that we don't always talk about here because those are the ones I get all the time, please go grab it right now at racershq.com/ask, and you'll get that download for free. Pleased to bring you as much information as humanly possible. Calvin says, "It's a fitness run." Well done, sir. Glad to see you out there crushing the motorsport fitness. By the way, we don't talk about fitness enough on here. And I am a very avid fitness enthusiast for motorsport. There's Shay. "Hey Matt, it's a bad rainy day. Nice to be in front of the fire." Oh, that sounds great, man. Jason Hyde says, "Hey Matt, trying to get home to watch all of this. Super interested in the part about high-priced racing schools." Let me help you out there, Jason. Let me move that to the end of the. I'm going to move that to the end of the session so you can try and make it home and park yourself in front of the computer so we can get to that together. So. Yeah, let's do that. All right. Okay, so here's what we're going on. Paul Sexton says, "More fitness." Yeah, Paul Sexton, man. He and I have been talking for a long time, and this guy is ripped as heck, which is awesome. He's ready for anything, and that's the thing if you want to be someone racing. Are you ready for anything? Because you don't need to be super fit to go autocrossing, but you do to get more interesting opportunities. So good job, Paul, on that, and good job on Calvin doing the same thing. Awesome. Lex says, "Did you see the guys who won the Gran Turismo tournament a few years back? Nissan made them push the cars in a race." Oh, wow, that's really interesting. Thanks for that, Lex. I had no idea. So, yeah, if you're not ready to push your own race car in a race, you are not fit yet. There we go. All right, let's jump into some stuff. Actually, let me lay out what we're going to talk about today, just so everybody knows up front. We're going to talk about more about Camber. I know Lex is here. Lex, pleased to have you on. I'm really happy to. I actually got two questions here from Lex because he's been hitting me with a lot of great stuff, and I had to get it on here today. He wants to know a little bit more about Camber. About how weight transfer and camber play together, and how does a driver know how to adjust camber and when. We'll definitely get to that. Really interesting stuff. I know Shay is on here. I'm glad that Shay is watching. Shay Martin Small, great name. Definitely in another whole part of the world. I think is it New Zealand? Man, I'm pretty sure Shay's in New Zealand, and working around the time difference. So thanks for being with us here, man. Appreciate that. We're going to talk about when to neutral steer. Great question from Shay about is neutral steer a thing that you'll do all the time? We'll get to that. Don't worry. Don't panic. And at the end, move this to the end so that Jason can get home and catch up and see where we're at here. We're going to be talking more about racing schools. Do I recommend any? What are my thoughts on beginner racing series? Again, that was from Lex, and waiting for Jake Reel to hop on. I hope that Jake pops on because he has something that I think will be very valuable for everybody. So hopefully Jake from the Rags to Races podcast will eventually show up. We'll see. Maybe he'll say hi. All right, that's what we got going on today. Let's jump right in. All right, let's start off with the Camber one. And I think it was I meant to look this up. I think it was session 2. Pretty sure it was session 2 where we talked about the tuning with tire pressures. And definitely something that people are going to want to be doing. Sorry, that was session 3. I just checked it. And yeah, if you're not taking tire temperatures after your runs or your passes or whatever, then you're leaving a whole lot of potential on the table because there's really no good way for a driver to sit in the seat and say, I need to adjust this camber. Maybe someone with a lot of seat time, but even then it hardly makes sense to me to make a bunch of guessing, you know, especially as autocrossers or even time trial guys, because there's not a lot of seat time. It's all pretty much all race time. So tuning is a thing you want to be doing, you know, before you get into competition mode. So I want to start with the first part of that question from Lex, though. He says, how does weight transfer affect camber in the corners? And I don't want to go and get too complicated about this. So for the purpose of this conversation, I'm going to say that it doesn't. We know that every little thing affects every other little thing, but for what we're talking about here, we're just going to say that it doesn't affect it, because I think for all intents and purposes, I think we can just kind of gloss over that. So to get really down and dirty about this, I think we're going to have to head over to the chalkboard to make this one work. So let's talk about the second part of this question in particular, and we are going to talk about weight transfer later, and hopefully we can tie that in as we go. But the second part of his question was, he says, I understand how the wheels move through the suspension travel in the corners, but when do you need to add or remove camber in the front or the rear? Great question. How does a driver tell when camber adjustments are necessary? Yeah, all right, cool. So let's hop over here. I got the lighting really good today. Really excited about that. Okay. Let's talk about some camber things. Okay, so we talked a couple sessions ago. We're not going to go too far into this because we don't really need to go over it here. You can watch the other live session. It was session 3, racershq.com/live3 if you want to go review that. But basically the idea was that tire temperatures can teach you pretty much everything you need to know about tuning your car, what kind of things you need to be doing, what kind of things need to be changed. You can tell if your tire pressures are correct. You can tell if the sway bars are working in the way that you wanted them to. You can tell if you're overdriving the car. You can tell if you're not driving the car hard enough. You can also tune your camber by taking tire temperatures, and that's what we're going to be talking about here. And so what you'll want to do, and again, we're not going to go deep into this, but if we're looking at a tire here, front to back, we're going to be taking 3 tire temperature readings across the bottom. This is the axle. So inside tread, middle tread, and outside tread, okay? And the general idea here is to make sure that these temperatures are all pretty equal. So let's say we had, I gotta write this backwards, I always forget. So let's say we got 100-degree measurements all across the bottom here. We would know that this contact patch is maximized and these tire pressures are pretty sweet. Okay, that's the general goal. We can move on from that and move on to something else. Okay, so now we're talking about camber. Though camber is an interesting thing because we know that the rear end of a Miata loves 2 degrees of negative camber. That's the sweet spot. Okay, and we know that a Pirelli World Challenge B-Spec Honda Fit can go up to 3 degrees negative camber all the way around the car. The problem is that everyone has always told us negative camber is good, negative camber is good, negative camber is good. So a lot of people will hop in and they'll say, all right, I'm going to just use whatever negative camber is available in that car. And then I feel like a lot of people are really going past the sweet spot. And sometimes less is more. And we're going to talk about why that happens. So let me draw another tire here. I'm going to over-exaggerate this. Okay, so now we've got a negative camber car, and of course negative camber is when the top of the tire is tilted in, of course, and that does things for technical reasons which we're going to talk about here. So if you're tuning for camber, there's a lot of interesting things you have to consider, okay? Unlike this, where we're looking for even tire temperatures all the way across, this is not going to look even though to tune this optimally, you're going to have temperatures that look a little bit differently, okay? Why is that? I can tell you right from the beginning that this outside edge, the outside tread, is going to be cooler than the inside. The inside tread is going to be hotter, and that makes a lot of sense because and this won't apply quite as much for autocross, but conceptually it's very important. So especially for road racers where a large part of the track is just going straight, okay, you can see why this section would be hotter, okay? And of course this is over exaggerated, and this part of the tire may actually be touching the ground, but because it's tipped in, there's less weight on it, and so it creates less friction and therefore less heat, all right? All the heat's going to be down in here. Okay, that's for a couple reasons. One, because all the weight is on it, but two, it's at a weird angle right now, right? So as this tire is rolling down the straight, you know, like when you bend something back and forth a bunch of times, like a paperclip, it gets hot. It's because the molecules are rubbing against each other, and that's what generates all this heat. This weird shape that the tire has to maintain as it's rolling will generate a lot of heat right here, okay? So it's okay, and it's optimal for the inside of this camber, negative camber tire to be warmer, okay? So we know that we have to be warm on the inside and cooler on the outside, and that's okay. Now, if you're, let me back up. Let's put some numbers on here just to make things make a little more sense. Okay, so we got our 3 readings right here. Let's say that this one is 100. This one, how do I make a 2 backwards? It'd be this way. There we go. And we got a 4 right there. Let's say that these are the 3 temperatures that you get. This is a pretty good spread. Again, everything is always going to be different. The variables will always change. This is a good guideline to shoot for. You have a 20-degree spread. Okay. Oh, no, I did this wrong. Hang on a second. No. All right, let's talk about this backwards. This is a bad spread, okay? So, and we'll come back to what's proper in a second. I just wrote the numbers wrong. No big deal. So let's say, and this is why camber tuning is so important, because, like I said earlier, people have a tendency to just shoot right to the max negative camber and say, hey, that's good. Everyone says negative camber is good. Well, let's talk about why that's bad. One reason that I don't understand, people are always tuning their tires. They don't have enough information to tune them correctly, right? Or they're not tuning them at all. So if you have a tire that works, let's say it works from 110 to 130 degrees, okay? Maybe this tire's optimal performance range is between 110 and 130 degrees, okay? Most people don't call their tire manufacturer and say, hey, what's your optimal temperature sweet spot, okay? So for someone who has too much negative camber, there's too much tilting like this, and there's way too much weight happening here. There's not enough load out here. So the guy who has 140 degrees on the inside and 100 degrees on the outside, that's not working, because there's just not, and I'm talking about degrees in Fahrenheit when I'm talking about this. Sorry, yeah, talking about in degrees Fahrenheit. Thanks for the clarification there, Shay Martin Small. Appreciate it. This is not going to be a good idea, because this inside tread where all the weight is outside of the theoretical temperature optimal range, okay? So this is why tires degrade, is because they operate too hot, they wear out fast, they chunk out. Once you get outside the optimal range, there's no grip. Okay, so this person's just wasting their investment, and the tire is just going away. Paul Sexton confirming Fahrenheit. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. So this is not working, okay? So having less camber in this case is going to be good, and that's why you need to know how to tune this stuff. Okay, let's go back to an actually good example, which I meant to write originally. Let's say that we have 100 again, and this time we have 110, and which way is that? It's this way. Now we have 120. Okay, now we have a 20-degree spread. That's a really good starting point, okay? That's an excellent starting point. As you can see on this theoretical tire, 20-degree spread, all the whole tire is inside of the optimal temperature range. This one doesn't matter as much because it's okay that it's cool, right? And so we don't need to worry about this one being too much. But as long as these two are inside the range and they're not too far apart, that is an awesome starting point, okay? And if you're not doing this scientific type of testing, like what you need to do is you need to go out, take a few runs, come in, measure your tire temperatures on all 4 tires, okay? And you're going to adjust them independently. You don't need to think about them, front to rear, whatever. So each tire is going to tell you what it needs. And there's a lot going on here, because if you get onto a left-hand dominant or right-hand, let's just say Lime Rock Park is a right-hand dominant course, you're probably going to come up with different numbers if you tune them all the time than you would if you go to, I don't know, I can't think of one off the top of my head, a left-hand dominant course. So this stuff is always changing based on what you do, and every time you change a sway bar, you've got to come back and do this stuff. So, tire tuning is never really done, okay? But I really hope that answers the question about why you need to understand how camber is important and how you can tune it. It's very, very simple. I mean, you can go buy a digital pyrometer, which is a heat measuring device, and you can do this in about 45 to 60 seconds. You can get all 4 measurements. All 12 measurements, 1, 2, 3, across all the tires, okay? And if you're not doing this, you're really leaving a lot of potential on the table. You'll just be guessing, which is a bummer, because we say it all the time, guessing is the same thing as hoping, and hoping is not a winning strategy. So there you have it. There's a little bit of extra information about camber, how it works, how a driver needs to adjust it after he gets out of the car. Because like I said, I don't think you can get there with seat feel. Right, if you're watching and you have a question, ask it right now in the comment field, okay? If you want to ask one later, simply go to racershq.com/ask. That's pretty good stuff. All right, let's see what we got here. Lex says, oh, he bought a thermal camera for his phone to do that. Lex, I've never heard of anything like that before. You're going to have to shoot me a link. Shoot me a link in the comments right now so that everybody can see what you're talking about. That's the first I've ever heard of that. How clever are phones? I'll tell you what, phones are amazing. I mean, I did all of my data acquisition. Well, we can talk about that all day too. I did all of my data acquisition on my smartphone. No, I use the tablet that I'm using to film this. But I've also done it on a smartphone. And you can do it for $9 with an app. It's all you need. Absolutely unbelievable, the technology we have at our fingertips. It's amazing. Yeah, okay, so I see that there are a few people on here. Please, if you're watching and you haven't said hello, please say hi. I'd love to shout you out and introduce myself, especially if we've never talked before. I love doing this. I love to get meet new people. That's one of the most fun things that I get to do, right? All right, cool. And Paul Sexton, are you doing tire temperature things? I know we talked about it a while ago. Let's have a conversation about that. We haven't talked in like 2 weeks, Paul. Let's get on the phone sometime, catch up. Whoa, 7:15. Where did the time go? All right, let's move into something else. Lex, I hope that last one was helpful to you. Okay. Okay. So let's move on to something that Shay Martin Small is here with us. There's Rick Staley. Hey, Rick. Nice to see you again. Hope everything's going well down there. Let's get together and race again sometime, Rick. It's been too long. It's always been too long. All right, let's talk about Shay Martin Small, who's joining us from another part of the world. Okay, cool. Lex has included in the comments I assume it's an app, probably for a phone, maybe a piece of software. I haven't been there yet. So you can do tire temperature readings with your smartphone. Lex, you're a total gang boss. Thanks for showing up, and thanks for putting that in the comments. That's awesome. I'm really excited about that. Cool. All right, cool. Paul Sexton says, sounds good. Awesome. Love it. All right, let's move on to this next one. Where's the time going? I can't believe how quickly the time goes when I get up here and do this stuff. All right, Shay says, and he says it's a hardware camera. Got it. Thanks, Lex. In last week's episode, I talked about neutral steer. He says, is that for higher speed corners, or can it be done in all types of corners? Because he's watching some types of racing, and sometimes they neutral steer, he says, but sometimes they don't. Great question. Boy, we've been really going on about neutral steer and weight transfer and all that really cool technical stuff for like a couple weeks now, several weeks, through the podcast and this, and on the website as well. So I'm so excited to dive even deeper into this topic. Really fun stuff. Okay, let me make a quick clarification before we get going on too far. When I'm talking about neutral steer, I'm also talking about rotation, a small drift, or yaw angles. Okay, that's the most confusing terminology debacle that I have yet found inside the motorsport world. Neutral steer, rotation, a small drift or oversteer, and yaw angles. Okay, if you don't know what some of those are, that's fine. Just realize that they are pretty much the same thing. There are some small differences, but most people use them interchangeably, so now we're all on the same page. Okay, right. Boy, yeah, there's a lot to think about here. I would say that right off the top, I would say no, you don't always neutral steer, because there is, when you're rotating a car, you are essentially putting yourself in a, I'm going to reel that back in and start over again. Where do you think the name neutral steer comes from? Okay, the term neutral steer comes from when you're going around a corner, but your steering wheel's in the center position. Okay, your steering wheel is in the neutral position, but you are continuing around the corner. That's what neutral steer is. That's what rotation is. Okay, and there's a very fine line between getting a car rotated, or being in neutral steer, same thing, and getting into an oversteer. When you get into an oversteer, things can go awry pretty quickly, especially when the car is more dynamic. Now, when I'm talking about the dynamics of a car, when I say a car is more dynamic, I'm saying it's going faster. And the faster you have a car going, the more effect you have with smaller inputs. Okay, so the car can be upset very, very easily with just the tiniest movements. And so that's why someone who's on, Daytona International Speedway will never ever consider rotating a car. It wouldn't make sense. The risk does not outweigh the reward, or the reward does not outweigh the risk, right? And so that's something you have to consider. Like when I am racing at Lime Rock Park, you get to the left-hander. I think it's turn 2. Yeah, turn 2. The speed is pretty low there. You're at the top of third gear, depending. And yeah, you should definitely consider rotating the car in that corner. It's a great opportunity to put the car into rotation because there's more grip potential while you're rotating, as well as more speed potential, all that other stuff. You're going slow enough so the car isn't super dynamic, right? And so the small mistakes that could happen are pretty easily saved because, the smaller inputs are not going to have such a vast effect. So that's one of the things I would consider. Now, I kind of have like a personal flow chart of when I want to rotate the car, and it's always changing, but the basics stay the same. Okay, so there's a couple considers here. There are a couple things to consider here. One is you're always going to be either thinking about weight manipulation, and I'm talking about being able to control weight transfer in the car, or rotation, some at the same time. Okay, so for example, going into that second corner in Lime Rock Park, you're thinking about rotation because you want to get through there as fast as possible, because you want to get as much momentum into the corner with more grip and speed with rotation, so that you can come out of that next right-hander onto the straightaway where you will compound a small amount of speed, which will drop your lap times considerably, right? So yes, you want to do it there because I feel the reward outweighs the risk. Makes sense, right? Okay, so we're thinking about rotation in that corner, okay? But as another example, in the last corner at Lime Rock Park, when you're coming back onto the straightaway, there's a pretty good sweeper at the bottom of the hill. Now, in the MX-5 Cup car, you have to lift off just a little bit, okay? And now we're talking about weight transfer. You have to come off the throttle a little bit so that enough weight shifts forward to give the front tires enough turn-in grip to start going through the sweeper. If you don't do that, you're going to push wide. It doesn't take much, maybe like a 40% throttle lift momentarily, okay? So weight transfer going in just a little bit. Now, if you've started to make the turn-in and you come back on the throttle really aggressively, it's all going to fall apart for you, because when you come on the throttle really aggressively, the weight is shifting off the front wheels now, and of course you're lifting the front end, right? And so you don't have enough cornering grip on the front tires to finish the corner, okay? So you don't want to rotate the car in that corner because it's pretty dynamic, it's very fast, and I don't think the reward outweighs the risk there, okay? So instead of thinking about rotation, you're definitely thinking about weight transfer. So there's always a lot to think about. So like I said, I have a flow chart. So number one would be, am I more concerned about getting the car rotated, or am I more concerned about manipulating weight even without rotation? Okay, I hope that makes sense. The second thing that I like to think about when I'm racing is, okay, are we qualifying or are we racing? Because there are two general speeds that racers will race at. The first one is qualifying speed, and the second one is race pace, okay? Qualifying is so interesting because people will do anything to get those last few hundredths of a second. It gets crazy to the point where in NASCAR, I don't like NASCAR anymore. It's a shame. Amazing sports, just torn apart by politics and money. We could talk about that. We don't need to. So back when they did qualifying like this, they would actually, when they did the 2-lap qualifying, they would actually drain the regular oil out of their motors and put in a 0.8 oil, which has almost no lubricating properties because it's so thin, it's almost watery. Okay, but they would do that for 2 laps because they're just decreasing the viscous drag inside the motor a tiny, tiny little amount by putting a thinner oil in so that they can actually run a higher RPM and get more power out of the car for those 2 laps. Unbelievable stuff, but I digress. When you're driving the car in a qualifying lap, then you're going to let it all hang out. The answer is usually, the answer is rotation. Yeah, because to get a good starting position on the grid, which is how you win or lose, usually, you have to let it all hang out. You have to put down 2 fast laps to get those last few hundredths of a second. It all matters. So number one, again, was, am I thinking about weight rotation or weight manipulation? Number 2 is, what's the situation here? Are we qualifying? Are we race pace? No one's going to go out and do qualifying pace for 40 laps. It doesn't make sense. Okay, the risk is too high, and you have to finish the race, to get any position at all right? So that's the kind of thing you have to think about. Now, if you're at the end of the season and your finishing position determines the end of the point series, I don't know. That's up to you. Does the risk outweigh, does a reward outweigh the risk? Maybe. Then you might start running some qualifying laps in the middle of your race. That's up to you. So, that's another strategy. Am I going to use a rotation here? Do I need to? So if you're way out front and you've got 2 or 3 second lead, no, you don't need to rotate the car as much because you can slow it down and play a little more comfortable, okay? And that's kind of how I feel about that. The third thing that I typically think about is, and this one's super obvious. The next one is risk versus reward. We already talked about that. But the other one is, what kind of surface am I driving on? Oh man, if you're on tarmac, you're pretty much always gonna want to consider rotating depending on qualifying or race pace. Okay, but everything's always changing. Are you 80 laps into a race? Is everyone using soft tires? Are those tires breaking down? Are chunks coming out of the chunks coming out of the tire and rolling across to the outside of the track? Where's the good line? If I start to rotate this car, is it going to run me wide? Am I going to get into these marbles? Am I going to get into sand? Who kicks sand up on the last lap? If I rotate the car here, it doesn't make sense. All this other stuff. So there's a lot of things to consider here for sure. But here I am. I'm making it probably far too complicated. And of course, if you're racing on dirt, I love dirt on iRacing. We've talked about that a lot. I love dirt. If you're on dirt, you have to rotate the car in every single corner. There is no question. There's just no way around it. I was just thinking about rain though. As far as rain goes, I don't think guys like to rotate cars in the rain very much. I know it's easier, and I guess it depends on the speed too. If you're on a slower course, rotation makes sense because, like I said, you'll be able to fix whatever's happening. But once you get up into higher speeds in the rain, I don't think it's worth it. So, wow. Anyway, just used up a lot more time talking about that. Vitter just left what looks to be a very helpful comment. I know he's been commenting a lot on the Facebook page. I actually can't see it. It's a little too long. I will come back after the episode and come into the comment section, and I will address that one later. It just went by too fast. I couldn't catch it. Sorry about that, man. Let's move on to something else. If you haven't said hi yet, please do. I'd love to say hello to you. I love introducing myself to people, so make sure you say hi in the comments here. And by the way, for those of you who aren't familiar with rotation and weight transfer as much, those are the two big things that separate pro drivers from club drivers. Basic skills that happen on a fundamental level, subconsciously, of course. And so if you have any extra questions about those, please include them in the comments right now. I love talking about this stuff, and I'd like to help you out for sure. There's William Jack Burke III. William, did you watch last week's session? I actually answered a question for you, but I didn't see you on the live session, so make sure you go back and watch. What session is it? Session 6? Yeah, that sounds right. Session 6. There's one in there just for you, William Jack Burke III. Cool name. Awesome. All right. Where are we at here? I'm all over the place today. Let's talk about this one. Like I said, I've got another one from Lex, and I hope Jason, I hope you've made it home by now, because I left this one to last, just specifically for you, so that we could get you into a good situation so you could sit down and make sure that you're getting all this information. Oh, cool. William Jack Burke III says, I got it and shared it. Cool. I appreciate that. It means a lot to me, man. Thanks a lot. That's very helpful. I appreciate it. All right. On the topic of racing schools, would you be willing to recommend any? As a side note, what are your thoughts on beginning racing series? I'm pretty sure these questions are connected. Jason, he is here. Awesome. Let's do this. I'm pretty sure that, and Lex, if you're still here, correct me if I'm wrong, I'm pretty sure you're talking about like a Skip Barber racing series, and like other entry level series that maybe are above autocross, because I think where you're at is you want to kind of move away from that into something a little bit bigger. I kind of think that's kind of what I'm getting from this, so that's how I'm going to attack this. Correct me if I'm wrong, please. Yeah, so last week I found out, and I'm a couple months behind the curve, that normally doesn't happen to me, but I found out that Skip Barber Racing School, Lex says yes, thanks Lex for confirming that. Skip Barber Racing School has been synonymous with extremely high-end motorsport education for decades, and they are officially bankrupt. Oh my goodness, yeah, that was a big piece of news, a huge bummer to see that happen. Jason Hyde, copy that. Yes, okay, Lex is asking about things like Formula Ford, Formula V, or F500. Okay, so probably open wheel series. I'm going to be straight with you, Lex. I don't know enough about those to have an intelligent conversation about them, but I am going to throw something at you which I think is might be even better for you in your situation. And then after this, I can go back and do a little bit of poking around for you to see where you're at with some of these other ones, and we'll talk about it, Lex. So I'll get with you a little bit later on this. I'm going to go in a little bit different direction though, because like I said, this is something I think will apply to everybody. Marty Davis, good afternoon, sir. Hey, nice to see you, Marty. I was hoping you'd hop on here. Great to see you at the end of the show. Go back and watch the first part. I'm feeling pretty good about this one. All right, Jason Hyde says open wheel. He's looking into, Road to Indy ladder system. Oh, cool. Oh, that's really cool. I'm going to have to do some more research about these, because I truly, just total authenticity, total honesty, I don't know enough about them to talk about them intelligently. I do have a good stepping stone for those of you. Dude, we're all on a budget. Raise your hand if you're on a budget. Everybody, pretty much everyone racing. Lex says, I want to start in something that won't leave me penniless. If I bin the can, he says bin the can, but I think he meant bin the car in the first season. Yeah, absolutely. Let me go in a direction with this, Lex. Let me hit this. Let me hit you with this, and then let me know what you think about this, because I think this might be something you're interested in. All right, here's where we're at. Topic of racing schools. I have never been to a pro racing school. I don't have a lot to say about them. I don't have a perfect one. I can tell you this right now. Do not go to the Skip Barber Racing School. I've been on TripAdvisor, and I've been poking around, doing as much research as possible about the Skip Barber Racing School, their position. They're still open. They're still registering classes. I can tell you this right now. Do not give Skip Barber your money. The internet is full of horror stories about people who have scheduled race classes with them, race days with them, and then Skip Barber has canceled the classes, and no one is getting their money back. I am almost appalled, and it's just so tragic to see such a huge, awesome company just go down the drain like that. I want to make it very, very clear that the person, Skip Barber, the legendary racer, the author of the Skip Barber books, Going Faster, whatever it is, has washed his hands of this. He sold his share of the company in 1999. He is not responsible for anything that's happening here. And so I just wanted to make sure that everyone is crystal clear on that. Skip Barber, the person, has nothing to do with this awful debacle racing school. I think that Bondurant is probably the Bondurant high performance school of driving. Jason Hyde says he hears the instructors aren't getting paid either. That sucks. Man, I wouldn't be able to sleep at night if I ran my business like that. I'm saying that's just a total tragedy. Man, do not give your money to Skip Barber. I never thought I would ever say that in my life. Unbelievable. Yes, and Calvin's right. The person Skip Barber actually does own Lime Rock Park, and I read this is public information here. We're not just doing hearsay rumors. The Skip Barber Racing School owns Skip Barber, who owns Lime Rock Park. They owe him and his track, I think it's $1.2 million. So you can see the magnitude of what's happening here. It's a huge bummer. Do not give your money to Skip Barber. The Bondurant School of Racing, I think, is probably the next best one. I know that they probably haven't gone above their means. They only have one school. It's in Arizona. They do a great job servicing kart racers as well as high-performance drivers and racers. As far as I know, they are still on track to being a very, very high-profile school. I don't know anything about them. I've never been there, so I can't sign my name to it. But I wonder, and this is hearsay, and this is total theory, conjecture on my part, with absolutely no inferences to back this up. But I wonder if the Bondurant School of Racing will buy some of the Skip Barber assets and maybe expand. That would be kind of cool. We'll see what happens. I know Skip Barber was hoping for a quick sale back in May. That did not happen. Their situation is much worse than they originally admitted that it was. So I cannot go and sign my name to a particular school. Never been to one. I like to learn things on the fly. It's worked very well for me. And if you don't have a lot of money, I don't think going to a high-performance racing school is worth your money if you have nothing left over to race. You can do like 5 very competitive seasons in autocross, or even at the pro solo level, for the same amount of money it takes to go to the 3-day racing school. So please consider something like that. So don't go to a school if there's no money left over. That doesn't make any sense, okay? Now, let's talk about racing series for a second. These are some of the things I do know about. Rick Staley, what are my thoughts on local HPDE? I'll come back to that in a second, Rick. Sit tight. Yes, racing series. Now, I was hoping Jake Reel would be on here. He's one of the writers now for Racers HQ, producer of the Rags to Races podcast. Very insightful guy, of course, and he has taken the leap into a very cool and what I think is probably the best option in the country for a racing series above autocross, and that is called the LO206. You might have seen it on the website. Jake did write about it. And Jake's not just talking about this stuff. He actually sold his Track Day Miata to buy an LO206 racing kart. So he's not just talking, he's actually leading the charge among all of us who are up here educating about motorsports. So definitely want to be following him. I think that he has a Facebook page at Rags to Races, something like that. I wish he was on. I wanted to have him comment on this, but that's okay. We keep going. The thing I really like about the LO206, there are a bunch of things. So Lex, stay with me on this. I know you want to get into something that's a little more high profile, but stay with me. I like the L0206 because most of us who are even autocrossing, I'm going to go way over on time here. Most of us who are autocrossing have $10,000 invested, $20,000. I mean, what's your race car? Are you racing an early '90s Miata? I mean, you're probably at least $5,000 to $10,000 in just for that. If you've got the Z06, you're probably over $40K. Depends on what you're doing, okay? But the 206 is something that you can buy brand new and go racing with for about $3,000 to $3,500. Which is absolutely amazing as far as racing money goes. It's crazy. And Lex says karting is cool. My dad's friend wants to get me into it. Stay with me, Lex. I think you're really gonna like this. Okay. Now, of course, I have to go take a quick detour here so that I can look something up and look more intelligent about it. Now, I had a podcast episode quite a while ago now that was specifically about the 206 chassis and kart because I went down and spent a day with Tom Clark of DRT Racing, who they're winning Super Nationals in Vegas and they're high-end shifter karts. This guy knows pretty much everything. Very intelligent guy. The episode about moving out of autocross and getting into kart racing, something like this. Hey, it's Tom, and there he is. Look at that, Tom Clark. He's watching right now. That's really cool. He's doing that. He says he has shifter karts. He's got touch and go karts, World Formula, and the 206. Give him a call. 603-943-5272. I've hung out with Tom. He's a really cool guy, and he's been on the podcast. That was episode 23. Get his insight on the 206. Are there older guys running these? I'm 26. No, man, you're totally fine. This is super competitive stuff. So the cool thing is that it's super cheap to get into. The engines and transmissions are sealed, so no one can work on them. No one can throw money at them. They're spec. The tires that they run are really hard compound tires, so that no one's replacing tires after each race. It wouldn't make sense to. I totally just lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that? And the grip is actually a little less with the hard compound tires. and so you have a little less power with less grip. And so it's also a momentum kart, which I like too, because there's no extra power to save your mistakes. It's a really cool way to learn. And man, I tell you what, I've been on the phone with David Higgins, Patrick Sandell, both ace drivers they're both driving now for Subaru Rally Team USA. Higgins is, a 21-time champion. He's a genius. Amazing. Patrick Sandell. Tom Clark in the comments. Great addition. He says, had an arrive and drive, which is a great test session. I did that with him in a 206. He was 67 years old and he's hooked. I hope that answers your question, Lex and Jason. Tom, thanks for adding that. That was really awesome. So the 206 makes a lot of sense. Super cheap to get into. Maintenance is almost nothing. Tom Clark can totally hook you up at DRT Racing. His number is in the comments. Give him a call and poke around. So episode 23 with Tom Clark on the podcast. That was a really good one for sure. And Rick Staley says there's still hope. Rick thinks he's getting up there in years, but he drives like an 18-year-old. Pretty cool stuff. And of course, I'm still looking for that. I think it might be episode 10, where I went really in depth on the Briggs 206. Here it is, the Briggs 206. So, Lex, I think that is probably the best way to go. The other thing I really like about it is that not only the money factor, but, that's where I was going. Patrick Sandell, Ross Bentley, David Higgins, Julian Garfield, pretty much everyone agrees that having a slower momentum car is going to make you a better driver in the end. It's a sink or swim situation, because it doesn't have any shifting. It's a centrifugal type clutch. There's only two pedals. There's no way you can shift, so it takes forever to come back up to speed. So when you screw up, it takes you forever to get that speed back. So sink or swim, make or break. You have to become a good driver or you won't win anything. And the top level drivers say and actually Michael Andretti also confirmed this for me. Having a slower car at the beginning of your career is going to make you a much better racer in the long run. Highly recommend that you consider something cheap. Lex says right now he runs a Miata and momentum is life. Thanks for throwing that in there. Really appreciate it. So Lex, I hope that was helpful. Paul Sexton, he says he drives a Prius and he does win with it. And I don't understand that. That's completely ridiculous. So he's the only one in the world probably, but it's definitely working for him. So, I'm definitely over here. Lex, I hope that was helpful. I'm looking forward. In fact, I want to get together with Tom hopefully later this year if everything works out. I want to get into a 206. I wish I had done that. I went down and raced a shifter kart with him because I thought it would be fun. I think the 206 would have been a lot more fun though, quite honestly. All right, so Lex, hit me right now to see just your couple sentences about what you think about that. See where we need to go with that in the next few days. And for any of you who are listening and have any karting questions, I know Tom's still on here. If you want to hit him with something right now, hit him. And anything else we talked about, like I said, neutral steer and weight manipulation, those are big deals. I just want to give people one last chance to put their thoughts in the comments before we wrap it up here. For those of you who are listening and think that this Q&A session is really valuable, it is. No one else is doing this, and I love providing information to people. So my favorite thing I get to do, I've gone and compiled a huge amount of other information, frequently asked questions, stuff that's a little more common, things that we don't go over and over and over again here, and you can get that for free at racershq.com/FAQ. We talk about it so much. Yes, we talk about so many things. It brings up more topics. Maybe we should do an hour. I will take this under advisement. Thank you for that. Lick says he'll definitely look into that. Will one fit in my excursion? Absolutely. I don't think you need a trailer. If you're motivated, you don't really need a trailer. I saw a guy with a sedan once who had a cart in the back of his back seat. Did it look funny? Yes, but if you want to accomplish something, there's always a way to do it for sure. That's the other cool thing is these things are small enough so that you don't have to have like a huge setup to go and break the bank. Yeah, Paul Sexton says he thinks his Prius would fit in an excursion, yeah. All right, we're way over here. I'm going to go ahead and shut this thing down. If you think of anything that you didn't get to include during the session, you can do it anytime you want at racershq.com/ask. And looking forward to this next week at same time, 7 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much for joining me on this, and I'll talk to you guys next week. Have a great week.